Good evening. Welcome. Welcome to this webinar of the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation and Business Making a Difference. It's wonderful, as I say, to have so many of you here today. My name is Richard Oreffo. I'm the founder of the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation. We have a wonderful speaker and business lineup, and we're just drawing them all into the room, as I say, over the next few minutes. So do bear with us. I'll tell you a little bit more about the speakers in a moment, but I thought it might be useful to just start with a brief background on the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation, where we are, the vital role that business that you can play in the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation. Next slide, please. So our vision: to create new futures for 100 disadvantaged Black British students. Next slide, please. We will empower 100 Black British students to attend our UK universities. We will cover their living costs, we will cover their tuition fees, and this will only be possible through a partnership with donors, with business, that's you, and with our universities. And the other component is a vital mentorship program. Next slide, please. We're really fortunate to have Adrian Lester, actor and director, as our patron. We have Professor David Oloshago, Dr. Melrose Stewart, Professor Sir Geoff Palmer as our ambassadors. And Dr. Stewart is with us, and we are just trying to bring in Sir Geoff to this webinar. Next slide, please. None of this would be possible without the wonderful trustees and advisors. So in the backgrounds here, we have Jan Carlisle, Professor Chris Jackson, Dr. Tim Claydon, Pierre Jada Qureshi and Naomi Dawson. And we have our corporate advisors. We have on this call, we have Chioma Okoye and Celia Fraser as our corporate advisors, and Elizabeth Riley as our philanthropic advisor. Next slide, please. So what is the model? It's really quite straightforward. What we want to do is to partner with universities, and they will cover the tuition fees. That's £27,500 for a 3-year degree. And together with business and with donors, we will then cover the living costs to give full scholarships. And what's critical here is that we also have a robust resilience program, and we have mentors for all our scholars. Next slide, please. So today we have 18 universities. They've committed 1.7 million in tuition fees for 62 students in the coming decade, and many of them are shown here. Next slide, please. We have our 5 corporate partners. We have Oxera, Jacob, Capital Group, Tradeweb, and Unilever, and we have representatives from them on this webinar. And these corporates have agreed to sponsor 1 Cowrie scholar, providing living costs and maintenance for these students going forward. Next slide, please. Equity, diversity, and inclusion really do matter. The United Nations Sustainable Goals showed that indeed, if we were able to reduce inequalities, that would help transform our world. We know that inclusion, we know that diversity, we know that equity will improve innovation, productivity, growth, and progression. But actually, there doesn't need to be a business case to do the right thing. Equity, diversity, and inclusion will drive business. Next slide. We know that a company that has these values of equity, diversity, and inclusion incorporated will actually result in greater innovation by their employees. Those companies are able to attract greater numbers of men and women. Next slide. And we know that investors will vote against the FTSE 100 shares if their boards don't meet the Parker ethnic diversity targets. And let's be clear, lack of ethnic diversity costs the UK £24 billion per year in lost GDP. And the simple message is that the most diverse executive teams are simply better. Next slide, please. So as a corporate perspective, what can you do? Well, you can help in terms of funding for our Cowrie scholars, mentorship, allyship, internships, provision of workshops. These are all opportunities that exist. Next slide, please. So where are we today? We have 5 full Cowrie Scholars that started in September 2021. 14 will commence in 2022. As I've mentioned, 18 universities have committed 1.7 million for our 62 students. We have our 5 corporates. We have a partnership with the Black Heart Foundation through Rick Lewis and Tristan Capital Partners. This will fund 6 scholars this year to be known as the Cowrie Black Heart Foundation Scholars. We have a significant mentorship program. We have the Friends of Cowrie providing support, and we were fortunate that Wellcome selected the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation as their charity for 2021. Next slide, please. So what is the ask? What are we asking from you today? We want to raise funds for the living costs of Cowrie scholars and unlock that 1.7 million from universities. Simply put, £8,000 a year over 3 years will fund one student's living costs through university. Next slide, please. This is what it's all about. Okay, this is my favorite slide, the class of 2021. We have Isabella at Glasgow reading Classical Civilization, Theology and Religious Studies. Here in Southampton, Will's reading Electronic Engineering. Nancy at UEA is reading Midwifery. Keziah is reading Journalism at Leicester. And Ganray at the University of Edinburgh is reading Medicine. These are our first 5 Cowrie scholars. Next slide, please. So, this webinar is in 2 parts. We're just drawing in our various speakers. We have Sir Geoff Palmer, Chancellor at Heriot-Watt University, knighted in the 2014 New Year's Honours for services to human rights, science and charity. We're trying to bring in Sir Jeremy Farrar, just have a technical problem, but we hope he will be shortly able to join us. Sir Jeremy was knighted in the 2019 New Year's Honours list for services to global health. We have here Dr. Melrose Stewart, awarded an MBE in 2020 in the New Year's Honours for services to physiotherapy. And the whole session will be chaired by Chioma Okoye, Managing Director at the European Institutional Credit Tradeweb. In the second part of the webinar, we have Richard Sharp, Vice President Human Resource, UK and Ireland for Unilever. Chioma, as I've just mentioned, Managing Director over at Tradeweb, will be joining. Leonardo Martino, Partner at Oxera, will be joining us. And Mike Franklin, Deputy Framework Director, will be joining us from the Jacobs Programme Delivery Partner Framework. And the session will be chaired by Celia Fraser. Celia is Insights and Analytics Lead at the Capital Group. Next slide. So this is my final slide. Education. It's the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. That was Nelson Mandela. We're looking for business to join us in this journey, to partner, to donate, and to make the difference. So for the first session, I'm going to ask Chioma Okoye, who's the Managing Director at Tradeweb. Chioma is also a member of the 100 Women in Finance, a global association supporting women in their professional journey and leading to the foundations of industry leadership. I'll ask Chioma to actually chair the first session. Chioma.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. Richard, you have given me too much credit though. I am a Managing Director at Tradeweb. I'm responsible for European institutional credit, as he says, but I am by no means the most senior Managing Director at the firm. It's a big firm and we do a lot of things, and we'll go into that a bit later, I'm sure. But let's get going. Thank you so much for everyone who's dialed in. And I'm going to go straight in with our panelists for the first session. I think we have everyone on, just to confirm. Dr. Stewart, are you still on with us?
I'm still here. Can you hear me okay?
I can, absolutely.
And good evening, everyone.
So my first question is for you, Dr. Stewart. Why do you personally think it's important that Black British students be given the opportunity and be enabled to go to universities here in the UK?
Oh, my goodness. You know, when I was thinking about the answer to this question, we have the conversation ongoing at the moment that too many students are going to university. and we need to reduce the numbers. But we know that amongst that number, there are not enough Black students. So as far as I'm concerned, university education offers students the space and time to develop, to become a thinker. It helps them to develop skills in evaluation, to analyze and explore evidence and research. And we know that that's the basis of knowledge. It allows them to develop professional skills, to explore opportunities, to set strategic goals, and importantly, develop relationships and network with people with like minds. There are some students entering university, there's some Black students entering university, but we know that Black students have consistently been at the bottom of the list of students entering higher education. And it's unacceptable, the levels at which students are entering some courses. And we have to ask ourselves why. There is no doubt in my mind that the history of racial discrimination has been a major factor from the youngest age, from the cradle really, and from nursery education right into the upper higher education system. We know that although there are problems, there's systemic problems with Black families because of socioeconomical disadvantages. But even when Black students are socioeconomically advantaged, we know that they are still finding racism a problem. And I won't go on too long about this, but Nicola Rollock wrote the book, Educational Strategies of the Black Middle Class. So even when students have some start and have some help and support from family, they're still struggling. There is limited networks to enable Black children to move their way through the system. A number of groups have grown up over time, but only a few offer the financial support that Cowrie is offering. And certainly, covering a 3-year, 4-year degree is problematic for a lot of students. They're usually the first generation to attend university, and they're trying to find their way alone. So as far as I'm concerned, Cowrie is doing a fantastic job. And without Cowrie, I know that there are a lot of students out there who are just not going to make it into the system. And it's unequal, it's unfair, and it's discriminatory. So personally, I think it's such an important role that Cowrie is playing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart. Now on to Sir Geoff, if we have you on. Are you on, Sir Geoff?
I think Sir Geoff is still not able to join us, but we do have Sir Jeremy with us. So Jeremy's able here to join us. Fantastic.
Sir Jeremy, welcome. Double entendre there. Welcome from the podcast. Thank you for joining us today. And I'll ask you the same question. What is your personal view and why it is so important for Black British students to be enabled to attend university?
I'm really sorry I was late. I've actually become quite good technically, but today things let me down. It was my fault, but I'm really sorry for that. But I'm here now. Like Melrose, I was thinking about this before joining, and I found it very difficult to answer the question actually, because it's just such a open question that I almost couldn't bring any specificity. I don't think I can improve on the perspective that we've just heard and Mandela's comment. But perhaps, particularly maybe as a white male here, I could put the answer around the other way, and that is the education for everybody will be better. The opportunities will be better for everybody going into education if Black students are part of that inclusive educational system. So it is, as Melrose just said, and I can't improve on what she said, all of the reasons why important for Black students to go. Perhaps I would just add to that the importance for all other students that Black students go. Because of the diversity of perspective, because of the differences of experience, because of the different ways of thinking that we all have, whoever we are, the education is only going to enhance us all if it's as diverse as possible. and that it's then as inclusive, as encouraging, and as opportune for everybody. And I think that is the way that it would enhance my educational experience as a white male, as well as giving the opportunity that Melrose explained extremely well. So I don't think it's a positive just for Black students to go. I think it's a positive for the whole of society and the whole of the educational experience.
Thank you, Sir Jeremy, because that is such a valid perspective. The fact that it is an enriching experience for everyone who goes to university to meet people from all backgrounds and expand their worldviews. So no, thank you. It can't always be about the sort of the moral justification for doing things. Everyone subconsciously or consciously does care about what's in it for them. So it is really vital to make that point as well. So thank you. So I'll go on to a second question, and you know, team, do let me know if at any point we do get Sir Geoff on, and I missed that somehow. But the second question, and maybe we'll stay with you, Sir Jeremy, is really around what your reasons are, your personal reasons are for getting involved with the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation.
Yeah, it's just Jeremy is fine for me, by the way. So the history of it goes back, and I'd be sort of completely acknowledging it. I'm come work for the Wellcome Trust, independent charity based in the UK, actually set up by an American 80 years ago. We do research and biomedical research, social science research, etc. And every year we have another organisation that we support as an organisation that we raise money for during the year. We call it the Wellcome Staff Charity. And in 2021, we all voted. It's one person, one vote, and the Cowrie Foundation got the vote, and therefore we supported it through the year. And I wish we could have done more, but I think somebody can confirm this. I think we raised about 120, 110, 120,000 pounds, and it's still going up, roughly. I may have got that wrong. Apologies.
I can confirm that, Jeremy. It was over 100,000, and we were incredibly grateful. And I know it's still going.
Wonderful.
No, it's still going, because also last year I wrote a book, something I've always wanted to do, with my colleague Anjana, and about the pandemic and my experience through it. And I wanted to contribute and donate any royalties, any money that I would be normally coming to me as an author of a book, to the foundation. Yeah. I'll give anyone a signed copy. I'll give anyone a signed copy if they want it, if they contribute to the foundation. And so, yeah, that's been my experience. It's been a fantastic experience. We've heard colleagues from the foundation talking here at Wellcome, and it's had a huge impact on us. It's had a huge impact on us. It's opened all of our eyes to the opportunities and the challenges. It's pushed our own diversity and inclusion agenda, which we are not good at here at Wellcome, and I'm free to admit that. It's encouraged, inspired, and it's pushed us further. And that's a hugely positive thing to say.
Fantastic. Yes, it's a journey, and anything that helps us along that and keeps us challenging ourselves surely is a good thing. Thank you, Jeremy. And back to you, Dr. Stewart.
Call me Mel, please.
Listen, Nigerian born and raised, it's all about respect for authority. And, you know, those of us who do not have doctorates, we respect those who do. Anyway, so same question for you, Mel.
Yeah, I understand totally this respect issue, and you know, it's all Caribbean as well as African, so I understand. I'm Dr. Mel everywhere I go, so okay. I'll keep the Dr. Mel. Okay, so you know, reasons for involvement with Cowrie. I look at the people on this platform, and I'm guessing that most of us have had the advantage of a university education. And it's a reason, you know, it's given us opportunities and we're benefiting, you know, so that speaks volumes in itself. But I have spent over 40 years in education, and over 25 of those years as a lecturer in higher education. And as a lecturer, I've had the pleasure of sitting on the stage for graduating ceremonies. You can imagine I've sat through quite a lot, and see my students walk up to the stage and to be commended for their achievements. And it is a proud moment for everyone, myself, the parents, and the graduates. But not only have I been constantly disappointed that often I was the only Black lecturer on the stage, but I was looking out at a vastly white audience. An even greater concern was the disproportionate representation of Black students coming up to the stage in an urban city, Birmingham, where the population is so diverse. Mm. For years, there's been talk about increasing diversity in the university population, and little has changed. We know that some courses are oversubscribed for some groups of its students, medicine, law. We know that some of those are oversubscribed, not necessarily for Black students. Okay. There are a lot of Asian students, but we need to look at how they are allocated. And I've done regular career days where students think certain jobs and universities are not for them because of stereotyping, poor career advice. Worst of all is that many of them cannot afford the 3 areas of fees that are required: the tuition, the accommodation, and the maintenance. That puts them off in addition to everything else. Cowrie gave me the opportunity to make a real difference. And I have seen the difference Cowrie's already making and reshaping and leveling and trying to change the playing field. So this opportunity, I really couldn't pass it by. And I noticed that Geoff has come in, and I know we've hogged the stage a bit, so I will stop there and hand back to you, Chioma.
Thank you, Mel, and welcome, Sir Geoff. Thank you for persevering to join us this evening. I'll come back to you with our first question, if you don't mind, just in the interest of time. Sorry, we're going right into it.
No problem.
Wonderful. Why do you personally think it is important for Black British students to be enabled to attend university?
Well, you know, if you look at the job market, you know, I've taught in the university I've been associated with university since 1964. And I left in 2005. And the point is that if you want to do, say, research at a high level, then you can't do it without going to university. And also you have to get a relatively good degree, because the funding for, say, to do a PhD or a master's from the usual route require a fairly good degree. And by that, they're talking about an upper second. So therefore, if you're thinking of research or an innovative life in terms of, say, research, then you not only have got to go to university, you've also got a good degree. If you go to university, it's almost try your best, because the good degree, a good degree is critical. Now, why it's also important to go to university, the job market, that is one of the selection procedures. So, you know, you're automatically eliminated. You're eliminating yourself without a good degree and industry. And I was associated with the brewing and distilling industries. And they not only require a good degree, and many of them require you have a degree in brewing and distilling. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the Brewdog beer. You know, Brewdog is a rather big company, very...
Yes.
A Brewdog, everybody's heard of
Brewdogs, yes.
Yeah, well, the owner is my student.
Wow.
So the Brewdog owner, I taught him. And what he did, he came in, and he is a white guy, but he's got a degree, an honors degree, in the subject that he wanted to work in as a career. So he did an honors degree in brewing and distilling. You can't do that. So there are degrees in certain institutions, industry related. And having a degree like that then gives you the edge, because you know something about the subject that you want to work in.
Absolutely. It lends credibility, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and
you can manage the business than joining with a chemistry degree.
Yes, yes. No, that is so true. And actually, as a follow-on, if we can stay with you, Sir Geoff, you became the first Black professor in Scotland, and we know that fewer than less than 1.5% of the professors in the UK as a whole are Black. Why do you think this needs to change?
Well, it needs to change, but again, how I became a professor. I worked. I left the university, Leicester, my first university, with an honours degree in botany. I'll just give you the history. And I then went. It wasn't a good degree. I didn't have an upper second. I had a lower second, which then is very difficult to get research positions. And I got a job peeling potatoes in the middle of London. But I persevered and I kept applying until I got an opportunity in Edinburgh. A wonderful lady took me because at the interview she checked the difficulties I had in life. And with that degree, she said, it's worth more than a lower second. And she took me in. I did my PhD in a couple of years. I went into a research institute, which is associated with cereals, which is my expertise, grains. And I worked there for 7 years. I then went back to the university as a lecturer, and I was lecturing from 1977 till 1989 before I became a professor. So therefore, within the science sphere, I don't know for the arts, but within the science sphere, to become a professor, that's my so-called qualification. I even had to get, I've got a honors degree, I've got a DSc, not an honorary, but a DSc, Doctor of Science, which is based on my research. So all my research papers are collected and they're assessed, and you're given a DSc. So if we want to get more Black people promoted, they've got to, it is always helpful to get a good honors degree, to get into a university or a research institute. Because in science, it's your research capacity, and that is in publications. So you've got to start publishing as quickly as possible, whether you're in the university or in a research institute. And then once you get that, if your publications are regarded as important, so you've got to have the opportunity to do research and to publish. And then you should get in a position for a professor. It's really your research in the sciences, it's your research production that is helpful, not your teaching. It is your research capacity, your research production that is very helpful.
see. Oh, that's fascinating, and one of those things that you don't necessarily understand unless you're in academic circles. No, thank you very much. We'll move over to you again, Jeremy, now. So from a health science and perspective, why does it matter from your perspective to enable Black British students to achieve these higher degree levels in terms of their education?
Again, Geoff, we were talking before you came on about this, and Mel gave a very eloquent answer, and I also argued from being a white individual that it was enhancing everybody's education. In a nutshell, is what I said. It took a long-winded answer to say it, but that's what I basically said. I would probably say similar actually on the research side, that the last 2 years have really shown us something we've known for decades, which is we're not all equal in health. There are social inequalities that drive many of our health issues in this country and around the world. And unless we address those, I'm afraid we're going to struggle, as we have struggled for 30 years, to enhance everybody's health and well-being. And I think part of that is being part of the solutions as well. Whatever my own background, and I wasn't born in this country, I didn't come here till I was a teenager. I was the youngest of 6 kids, and I was the second to go to university of the 6. But I have a perspective that comes with my background. That's only one background, it's only one perspective, and that's true in research. I'm sure Geoff and Mel would agree. It's true in society. So I think, again, the more inclusive, the more diverse, the more perspectives, the more insights that come into any walk of life, but particularly research and science, we will all benefit from. Otherwise, it'll be a select group, selected for whatever reason, that will benefit from that research and science, and it won't be shared equally, as we've seen through COVID.
Absolutely. I think this whole period of the pandemic has made it possible for us to see some of these things in sort of brought to the fore, whether it's skin diseases and how they present differently on Black skin and misdiagnosis because of that, or technology that does not recognize Black people, and it's therefore there's a risk of, you know, kind of being knocked down by a car or what have you, because it literally does not see you. You're so right. There's so many angles to this. Thank you, Jeremy. Mel, coming to you finally.
Okay.
From your perspective as a physiotherapist, how would having more Black British students having careers in physiotherapy make a difference?
And, you know, again, Jeremy has hit the nail on the head. It's the health inequalities. Why are they continuing? We have to ask ourselves, why are they continuing? We know there are health inequalities in other countries, but what is the basis for the health inequalities perpetuating? And I think I was the only Black physiotherapist in my group for many, many years. It is changing slowly, but very, very slowly. Why does it matter if I'm the only Black one? I remember writing a letter about equal opportunity. It was so long ago, we were talking equal opportunities, because I was wondering what the society, our Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, was doing about showing more people like me, or having more people like me, because it mattered. The profession needs to show it's more inclusive. That's one thing. We need to show that we're breaching barriers and discriminatory practices, because we know that they're there. I heard Sir Geoff said, you know, this tutor saw his 2-2, his grade 2-2 for his degree, and made a positive action, took positive action to say this student is capable, this student is able to complete a degree. He was no less than anyone else, but was leveling the playing fields, and look where Sir Geoff is today. So we need to breach those discriminatory practices, because they are there, break down those barriers. We're leveling those playing fields for equal access to higher education into the profession. And we're addressing inequalities in health if we get more physiotherapists into the Black physiotherapists into the profession. The underserved community is a major problem. We are the global majority. Black and brown people are the global majority. And yet we very rarely, you know, put the emphasis on that. Having more Black students is not the only solution though, but people sit up and listen when they see people who look like them and speak like them. Students say it, patients say it. Also, we know that there's strength in diversity, as we've already touched on. So let's be more inclusive. Physiotherapy offers a multitude of opportunities for career development, and currently many Black students are being deprived of these. So we need to be more inclusive.
Thank you so much, Mel. I think we may have enough time for perhaps one question from the group. Okay, so we've got one here. The government's plans regarding student loan repayment will hit the poorest students and will deter many students. So the question is, if students in their final year of undergraduate courses can apply, or is it only exclusive for first-year students to apply? I assume this is for a Cowrie scholarship. So Richard, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so the scholarships are actually for people starting their first undergraduate degree. So obviously, if we had limitless funds, we'd be able to widen it out. There's obviously, everyone's heard about the pipeline. We'd want to think about PhDs. But in the first instance, this is actually for people starting their first degree and entering a university. So if you're already on a course, unfortunately, we're not yet in a position. If we get some wonderful donations and we can meet our targets, then yes, of course, we want to open it up to masters, to PhDs, and to students that are financially challenged. That would be the ultimate goal. But at the moment, it's for those starting their first degree.
Thank you, Richard. And I think with that, I'm handing it back to you. Thank you very much to our panelists for the first session.
Okay, I really want to extend my thanks to Jeremy, to Mel, and to Geoff. It's such a short, and they will take more questions at the end if we have time. Thank you, Chioma, for sharing. Okay, so we're going to move on to part two. We have our industrial partners, our business partners, our corporate partners with us. This session will be chaired by Celia. So Celia Fraser is the Insights and Analytics Lead at Capital Group. She currently leads the Capital Associates of African Descent Community for Europe. In case some of you are wondering, Celia is the daughter of Dr. Melrose Stewart, and Celia is also one of our corporate advisors, as I mentioned at the start. Celia is a Google Empower UK Top 10 Black executive, and she won the Woman in Investment Rising Star of the Year award. Celia will give a few words from the Capital Group perspective, and then ask a few questions to our business panelists. So Celia, over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and delighted to be here and for those kind words of introduction. And so I got involved with Cowrie soon after inception, actually. As Richard mentioned, I work at Capital Group. I work in the investment management industry, which is one of the richest industries that you can be in. And I think often as a company across the board, people think DE&I internally, what are we doing for our staff, or what are we doing in terms of the workplace? And actually, I think that's just a fraction of it. I think we really need to start looking, what are we doing for the communities in which we operate? I'm based in London. London is an incredibly diverse city. When I look at my colleagues, less so. When I look at leadership, even less so, and it continues to drop off. So there's definitely the internal element, but then we start talking about, well, where do people donate and how do we actually get financial help and support to charities? And again, if the board and leadership are putting X amount of their salaries away, that's often to charities that they know about, and not the ones that don't have people supporting initiatives that look like them to help those underrepresented communities. And actually, one of the things that I think my company is industry leading in is their grant schemes and their commitment to supporting charities outside of the workplace. And so for me, I think getting involved with Cowrie in itself was a no-brainer. I think I benefited from a brilliant education. I went to, obviously, primary school, secondary school, then off to the States and university. I played a lot of tennis growing up, so I was out in sports scholarship for 4 years, and I wouldn't be where I am today without my education and the sacrifices that my parents made to get me to where I am. that's not available to everyone. And so I think Cowrie is desperately trying to remove some of those barriers. And that, as soon as I heard about the charity, I put my hand up to get involved. And fortunately, my company has fully supported me in this mission. So yeah, year 2, and hopefully many more years to come.
Thanks very much, Celia. So I think what would be great is if we can bring up our corporate partners, that would be wonderful. And then Celia will take questions to each of the panelists. So we have, as I've mentioned before, Mike Franklin from Jacobs. We have Richard Sharp, Vice President Human Resource at Unilever for UK and Ireland. Leonardo Maltino, he's a partner at Oxera. And so we're delighted to have him on there. And of course, Chioma, wearing a different hat in this round as one of the managing directors, European Institutional Credit at Tradeweb. And Celia, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Leonardo, you're first up. Do you mind just talking to us about how has or how will partnering with Cowrie help your organization?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Celia, and thank you, Richard, for inviting Oxera as well. I think that it's fair to say that we haven't committed to work with the foundation for a PR purpose, but really because it is in line with what our strategic objectives, with that we want to contribute to our society. As a firm that we employ economists, we work on probably some of the most important social, environmental, and economic issues that we face. And our focus is on where we can make the biggest impacts to achieve change, both within our organization and in the wider society. So ensuring that we have the best, the most diverse thinking around the table for us has never been so important. We know that the most, as has been already explained earlier, we know that the most successful teams are those that combine diverse perspectives, and that creating a workplace where everyone can thrive means that our people can be happier, can be healthier, and truly able to make a difference. So at Oxera, we are really strong believers and passionate that diverse and inclusive companies that find and nurture all the best talent, that increase employment engagement, and can also improve client satisfaction. So we therefore see that the promotion of diversity and inclusion and supporting initiatives like the one of the foundation are a key driver for us to enable us to innovate and to grow as an organization.
Yeah, I completely relate to so much of that. And I think often when we think of DE&I, we don't necessarily factor in some of the socioeconomic factors. And I think that's something that Cowrie does, looking at, I often say to recruiters, I don't want you to just go to Oxbridge and pull out the black kids from there. You've got to widen the net and actually go to several of the other good universities, or outside of the universities even, to start bringing this talent into organizations. So thank you, Leonardo. Richard, you're next up, if you don't mind. The next question is for you. Can you just tell us about the additional support that Unilever is offering to Cowrie students?
Yeah, hi Celia, nice to meet you, and really grateful to be part of this this session this evening. I guess let me just quickly start with just who Unilever are, because maybe people don't know. It's not a famous brand name as a company, but you would know the things we make. So we're the biggest ice cream maker in the world. So you probably heard of Ben & Jerry's, Magnum, Wolves, Cornetto, and the like. We're the biggest deodorant maker in the world. So hopefully you're all wearing Shore deodorant or Lynx deodorant. And we also make household cleaning products as well. So Persil, Comfort, Domestos, Cif, all sorts. I could probably name them all, but I won't bore you. We're a very global company. So we employ people all over the world. We employ about 6,000 people in the UK, but we employ about 180,000 people around the world. So diversity to us means many different things, because actually, if you look at sort of the employment base we have in Africa or in Asia, you know, a very different kind of diversity challenge to what we have in the UK. We're very lucky to live in one of the most ethnically diverse countries in the world, actually. So for us to support the Cowrie Scholarship was again a bit of a no-brainer. I'd agree with what Leonardo is saying. We have a commitment to providing job opportunities to about 10,000 people over the next 5 years in the UK. And our focus is going to be on people who have not been so lucky in life as perhaps I might be, or some of the other speakers you had, and giving people an opportunity to take a step up. Because when you start to look at some of the data, you know, people from less good backgrounds are 80% less likely to end up in a professional job. If you look at Black school leavers, only 6% of them attend Russell Group universities, whereas 11% of white school leavers go to Russell Group universities. And we just, you know, as a consumer goods company, we need to have people who work for our company who represent consumers in the UK. Consumers in the most diverse types that we can find. So we're really committed to a whole number of programs. This is one of the things we do. We're also big supporters of the Amos bursary. So, you know, if listeners here haven't discovered the Amos bursary, quick advert for them as well. But in the Cowrie Scholarship, what we're doing is, as well as sponsoring a student, we're also making sure that we're providing some of the mentoring and coaching opportunities we provide to all of our students that come through industrial placements and summer placements and the Amos bursary. We're offering the opportunity to take summer placements, industrial placements with Unilever, which gives you a fast track to a graduate job at Unilever. So as well as, you know, the person we're sponsoring on the Cowrie Scholarship, we're offering kind of career advice, employability advice to every student on the program, and giving them an opportunity to understand, you know, how it's been very interesting to listen to the sort of university team talking earlier about research and so on. We love that, but we'd also love people to come out of the Cowrie Scholarship with the opportunity to work in the private sector. So we want to help anybody, really. So I guess that's what we're doing to support. It's a bit of a long answer, Celia, but hopefully helpful.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I also think people often assume that these students will have other people in their network that they can ask some of these questions, and they don't. They might not have parents that went to university. They might be their first out of their peer group to go to university, and actually having mentoring, and whether it's CV writing, personal branding, public speaking, all of that can come from companies that we work for. People are actually willing to engage and run workshops like that. So I think obviously there's a financial support, but then additional areas in which corporates can offer help as well. Which ties me quite nicely into a question for you, Michael. And this one is around, as well as that financial support, what do you think is the most important action an organisation can make to support disadvantaged Black British students?
Thanks, Celia. I know Michael is what's on the screen, but please call me Mike. I'm normally only Michael when I'm in trouble.
Apologies, Mike. Apologies.
No problem at all. So what's the most important thing? I mean, when I was thinking about this question, I couldn't narrow it down to just one thing, but we have spoken about already the importance of representation and the importance of networking. So, I mean, for me, those are the two things that we absolutely need to focus on. And it's fantastic that through Cowrie Scholarship Foundation, you can also be mentored. You can sign up as a mentor to the foundation, which is very unique in my experience in a lot of these initiatives. So the network piece is so important, because what a lot of people don't tend to realize is the fact that the network gets you everywhere, and it's kind of closely linked to privilege, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. For me, without having a network inside an organization, I don't think it's likely that I would be in this position working for a company as big as Jacobs. It's one of the SVPs said at an event last week that, who are Jacobs? We're the biggest company you've never heard of. So my career journey has been sporadic. I'm the only person in my family to go to university, but I was sponsored through the army. Was how I could afford to go to university, and off the back of it, I ended up going to Sandhurst and then spent a few years as a commissioned officer in the British Army. I was referred into this business from someone that I had worked with in the past in the army. I grew my network, and that is in itself privilege, right? That's that I've been put into that position based on my privilege. So if you are an organization that's watching this webinar and thinking, what can I do as an organization, but I can't afford to join up as a partner with the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation, the biggest thing that you can do is mentor, and more importantly, sponsor people. If it is so much easier for someone to get into an organization if they already know someone in there, they already learn about the organization's culture. It's very, very important. So I'd also cover off on another point that's, Dr. Mel mentioned it earlier. Representation matters. And you need to be representative at all levels. Cowrie Scholarship Foundation is obviously early careers, and a lot of organizations just target early careers to ramp up the numbers and say that they're doing a really good job with diversity. It's one element. Yes, early careers are the future, absolutely, but it's so important that you have that representation all throughout your organization. It's not just the early careers. So if you can find people and progress people and look after people in your organization and get them that leg up, sponsor them, mentor them, then that individual can pay that forwards, which is exactly how I got into this situation in the first place.
Thank you, Mike. And I think you and Richard are clearly in competition about the big companies that nobody knows. I'm not sure who's going to come out on top there, but some really, really important takeaways. And I think mentoring is crucial, but I like that you called out sponsorship as well. And I was at a panel event yesterday that said Black people are most likely to be over-mentored yet under-sponsored. And I think you're always told to go and get a mentor, do this, meet your mentor, blah, blah. And I think there's definitely a role that mentors play, but actually who's shouting for you when you're not in the room. And obviously that's something that's important at corporates, but also for these students, like who's going to champion them when they're not there, when they're elsewhere, but they've got someone that's advocating for them, for their progress, for their development, for their university, and then upwards. And that only comes, like you've mentioned, from having exposure to the right opportunities and being able to build their network. So I really resonate with a lot of what you've just said. And Chioma, over to you, my fellow corporate advisor. Can you tell us about the additional support that Tradeweb is offering the students?
Certainly, with pleasure, Celia. So similar to the other panelists, Tradeweb is actually, well, I think I'll say a few words about what we do. It's a financial technology company, and we build and run electronic marketplaces for financial securities. So think bonds, derivatives, ETFs, equities, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of us at Tradeweb are technologists, but also a lot of us come from the financial services sector, which is the sector that we're serving. And that was my background. So I was at Goldman Sachs for 11 years before I joined Tradeweb. And going sort of further back with the schooling that I had, both my parents were very focused on making sure my sister and I would have the best education they could afford. They made sacrifices. They were fortunate at the time that they were going to university to have achieved scholarships to go to universities abroad. And this was actually during the civil war in Nigeria. We're from the east of the country. So they were basically from what would have been Biafra. So they were in a situation where, fortunately for them, because of their academic prowess, they got those scholarship opportunities and they came back home, and education was always a priority for our family. Now, sort of fast forward to my early days as a university student, had I not been in the circles that I was in, because I was in a top university for my course, I would not have even had the opportunity to know what was out there in terms of summer internships. As it turned out, I did. I applied and I got into the Goldman summer internship, and there was a high conversion rate from the summer internship to a graduate job. So you can see the stepping stones that if you don't even have an idea of how to even begin, you don't even get a chance. And then again, sort of, it helps at every level. Then migrating from finance to financial technology, having the contacts, the networks, the knowledge of how the asset classes trade, that gives you a leg up into financial technology. So really all this to say that, you know, it really can't start early enough. So it's fantastic what Cowrie is doing at this entry level, at this university level where it all really begins. With Tradeweb, we have a very active diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, which works closely with our executive team. And so as part of that, our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee were looking for 2 charities that we were going to support sort of longer term. And these needed to be charities that spoke to our core values, key core values of ours, like reducing inequality and quality education for all. And it also had to be charities that were nominated by our membership, because Tradeweb really cares to support what our people care to support. So we had a long list, and from that, the two charities that we selected, the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation was one of those. And it's not just about financial support, which we do. So we are sponsoring a Cowrie Scholar, but it is, as everyone else has said, about opportunities. So the opportunity to come in and work with us as part of an internship. We've earmarked an internship spot for a Cowrie Scholar. And working with not just Cowrie, but other organizations like 10,000 Black Interns, SEO London, Sponsors for Educational Opportunities. These other organizations as well are looking at people or young people from historically underrepresented groups and helping them make that transition into the professional services. So we are trying to help in as many ways as we can, but Cowrie really resonated with us, and that's why it's our top pick for charities to support on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Chioma. And I think, again, we're just hearing a lot about networking and supporting these students, but also helping them build that network. And similar to you, I had a great education. I grew up and played a lot of tennis, but my parents are very clear it's tennis and school, or just school, but not just tennis. So I was always studying alongside my sport. And I think that then obviously opened up doors for me, which hopefully Cowrie can also do for some of the students that we are supporting. I think we've got time for questions from the audience. I don't know if there are Q&A. Richard, I don't know if you want to come back on and handle any questions for any of our panelists.
Yeah, so again, huge thanks to all of our panelists on here and to yourself, Celia. If people want to put questions in the chat, then please feel free to do that. I guess one question I could ask each of you in turn is, what is the biggest barrier to getting people into your companies? From a BME background, what is the barrier? What do you see as the first thing that you need to remove? And if I run around in turn, let's start with Leonardo.
Thank you, Richard. That's a very good question, and a question that we struggled actually ourselves to answer. Partly of our answer, partly of one of the reasons why we committed to working with the foundation was precisely as we saw the work that you are doing, just precisely trying to get to the heart of the problem by challenging the universities to provide more opportunities to underrepresented groups. So we do see that, that has, to me, that's the issue that what we've been trying to focus. We are doing everything that we can in terms of, not only engaging more with universities that are more committed to strong diversity and inclusion practices. We are trying to broaden the pool of universities that we recruit, but there is only so much that a small company like us can probably do. But focusing in terms of, what is it that is preventing students in school, which are thinking about whether they will be able to have any chance of going to university, what can be done to support those groups. And I think that there is a strong role there for the universities, especially, to try to promote and break that. And that's what we are focusing on.
Okay, Leonardo, that's fantastic. Thank you. I'm actually going to push you all very quickly. Let's get some quick questions in. So, Richard, over at Unilever, what is the biggest step? Is it representation? Is it people don't see? What is it? What's stopping this?
It's a really interesting question, Richard. I don't think we have any barriers. I think we just weren't trying hard enough, if I'm really honest. I came into this job 2.5 years ago, and about 10% of our student intake came from BME backgrounds, and we've just pushed harder and harder. Last year was 30%. This year we're going for 40%. So you've got to look in the right universities. You've got to have the right approach. In our assessment centres, we always make sure we have a diverse set of senior leaders doing the recruitment, so people get to see people they recognise. I think you just have to try hard. None of this is impossible.
All right, I'm going to ask Chioma, then Celia, then Mike. Chioma.
So with this, I think I really am with my predecessor on this, in terms of how hard you try does actually impact the results. And once you actually start to push yourself, and I know certainly for us at Tradeweb, the last sort of 15 months or thereabouts, we've always had our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, but racial inequality has been a focus for us, a greater focus for us in these past 15 months. And we just need to constantly challenge ourselves. When we think about the pipeline of recruits, we can also challenge our partners. Like, we can challenge the companies that we work with that bring us candidates to make sure that they're giving us a diverse array of backgrounds in those candidates. And when you actually put that almost into your company's approach and what you need from your suppliers, that's when things start to change. They might have a moan that it's difficult, but it's by no means impossible. They just need to apply themselves more. And we've certainly found that. And our head of HR recruiting, I think, is on this call, and he has done a fantastic job. And it's really a matter of kind of looking at ourselves in the mirror and just challenging ourselves to do more and do better.
Okay, all right. I like that, challenging ourselves to do more, to do better. Maybe we can roll that out across the whole of the sector. Celia, then Mike.
Sure, I think do more, do better is something that I can relate to. I do think it won't happen overnight, and it's not that we've only just started this movement. I think if I look at my industry, which is asset management as a whole, it is very white, it is very male. You're not just going to pull out managing directors that haven't been there, which is again why things like Cowrie, why 10,000 black interns, these schemes, we've got to start fixing the pipe and pushing talent through. That argument doesn't hold for why grad schemes are still very, very white male. I think that is where you're pulling people out of university. Try harder. I think Richard said it, try harder, do better. I think we do have, it will take a little bit longer to see it changing in leadership. It would be nice that if we could have an array of black managing directors leading the 10,000 black interns program. I know personally that's just not what it looks like at my company. It doesn't look like that a lot across the industry in general. So that will take time, but I think we can't shy away from it. If we're serious, we know that it's not an overnight thing. We know that this is years long of effort, and we've got to keep pushing.
Mike.
Yeah, so I'm going to put a slightly different spin on it. So I think barriers do exist, but I think by and large they tend to exist in society rather than in the organisations. And I completely agree with the previous speakers that the importance is to challenge our own practices. You know, we need to be advertising in the right places. We need to stop just taking people from Oxbridge, from traditional white male backgrounds. We need to focus more on diversity, rather than just do the easy thing.
So this is a difficult question, and why don't we end with some difficult questions? So quite often within the university sector, we hide a multitude of sins under what I call the BAME umbrella. And that's not quite the same thing. So I'd like to ask each of you in turn, within your corporations, do you have that information that allows us to understand where we're failing the BME and not covering everything under the umbrella of BAME, which we tend to do quite often within our university sector when we want to show that we're showing great representation? And I'm not a fan of BAME, and I'm not a fan of other and us, them and us. So I'm quite keen to understand across the five of you, what is that relationship between the BME being brought through, being championed, and being actually brought in? If you like, a follow-up to the first question I asked you.
I'll jump in, call it out and say it. I think we, it's black. I think we can identify it as black, and I think we should. What I think is really important is collecting the data in the first place, and some companies just don't have it. And I know that at my company, we've only just started. We've got 2 years worth now, but we only just started. I remember joining and thinking, this is possibly the whitest place I've ever been. And I then went to HR and I was like, oh, what's the breakdown of the London office? We don't have it. Roll forward 2 years, we did it at end of 2020, we've done it at end of 2021. At least we've got the metrics. They're not brilliant, but we know where we're starting. We then had the white and other, I think it was, or white and non-white. And I was like, no. I also put my hand up to do the data. I work in data, and I was like, send me all the survey response, I'll collate it and we can send it back. So I knew we had all that information. I was like, you've got to break it out, because actually, I think if we looked at senior management level, we then said we've got, I don't know, I think it was around 24 BAME. And I said, okay, you've said that, but I know the numbers, and we've got 2 that are black. So that's not good enough, because we had 2 that were black last year. So actually, now that we're collecting this data, are we using it to drive things forward and not hiding away from the numbers now? So I think we call it out.
I think I'm reading accountability. It would be great if across the sector we can start to really
collect this number.
We have to think about accountability and not society, because that's just let's not go there. All right, Leonardo, then Mike, Chioma, and Richard. So Leonardo.
Again, I think, thanks, Richard. That's an area also we've been trying to look at. I mean, we are a business that we operate, I mean, not only in the UK. I think that in the UK, we do have some access to that information. Clearly, we are having a lot of restrictions when we're thinking about our business outside the UK, where there are very significant legal barriers, even just to collect information about gender. Let alone any other background. So, I mean, we are trying the best that we can in terms of trying to look at that information and see where else can we actually put an emphasis in terms of promoting more diversity. But again, it is a restriction.
Chioma, then Mike, then Richard.
Yes, so at Tradeweb, we actually produced our first corporate social responsibility report last year. And this question about whether you can actually collate ethnic statistics and put them out there was one that we came up against as well. So we have the statistics in our CSR report for the US side. On a global basis, we have the gender statistics, but we don't have ethnic stats on the European side. And apparently there are some limitations to us doing that. Having said that, it's a small enough company, you can walk around and you can actually see when the difference starts to be made. So we can actually measure. I know for a fact who we've hired in the last sort of few months who are Black. So I know that we're moving in the right direction, and it's just something we need to track. Now that we've actually put it out there in a report, our customers, our stakeholders will be looking for us to be making that change.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so Chioma sort of stole my chips there. Celia said it earlier about the importance of granularity of that information. So one of the things that attracted me to Cowrie Scholarship Foundation was that it was intentional. It was authentic. It was talking just about Black students. And that's something that I'm managing under the Action Plan for Advancing Justice and Equality, which is the Jacobs Initiative, just focused on Black employees in the company and attracting Black talent. So gathering that information and getting that granularity data is critically important, but don't use that as an excuse to not do anything in the meantime. And this is what I was saying about Chioma. While that's all going on, you'll get excuses like, oh, it's going to take us ages to do that. You can walk around an office and see how diverse it is, and then you can start doing something about it. So don't drag your heels, get after it.
Okay, let's get the passion in there. Richard, finally to you.
So I couldn't agree more with what everybody else has said. I've just got a couple of builds, I guess. One of which is that we, about 18 months ago, chose to collect this data in our HR system. So we're actually collecting not just ethnicity data, but also gender identity, sexual orientation, disability in our HR system. And it's a journey. There's a thing called GDPR, which is the European legislation around data we can collect. And it was really bloody hard to get through our lawyers, what we were collecting in our HR system. We're now in the UK at about 40% completion, and therefore it's statistically valid. And by collecting it in your HR system, you can do way more than by surveys, because you can look at pay issues, you can look at performance ratings. By ethnicity, you can look at the bonuses we give, and we can look for any kind of unintended discrimination. I'm really pleased to say that when we did our annual pay review this year, we were able to look at an ethnicity lens on the pay rises we were giving people, the bonuses we were giving people, the share awards we were giving people, to check there wasn't any bias in that. Pleased to report we didn't have any bias, but if you do that, you can really start to track the progression of BME people through your organization, rather than just, I love everything everybody else has said, but I'd encourage employers to start thinking about really including this kind of information across the base of information you have on your employees.
So I'm going to close with one final question to all of you, a very short response. What's the one action you would ask any of the businesses to do, and why should they do it? So 2 very short questions for you and 2 very short answers. What's the one thing they can do, and why should they do it? And I'll start with Leonardo. No, let's run the other around. Let's go back to Mike. It's not fair to always pick on someone to start first. So Mike, we'll go with you.
What was the first question again?
What's the one thing that we've got businesses listening to this call? What's the one thing they should and must do right now?
You need to embed this sort of activity into the heart of your culture, because most, if not all, organizations are culture first. Okay,
embed into your culture. Celia.
Sign up to the Cowrie newsletter is the first one. I think get information with this, partner with us. We're looking for corporate partnerships. As we said, it's not all about the financial side of things. Networking, mentoring, opportunities. There's so many different ways for corporates to get involved. We'd love to hear from you.
Richard.
I was going to say the same as Celia, but let me add another one. I think it's really important that you get your leaders, senior people in the organization, to actively sponsor younger talent from Black and other ethnic minorities in the organization, because you need that active sponsorship to push individuals, to push their own career and development, but also to push barriers out of the way for them to advance their career. You will really see the benefit. And I come back to almost what you said right at the start of the session, Richard, about diverse organizations perform better. This is one element of diversity, and senior leaders need to really push for this and sponsor talent to come through the organization.
Chioma?
Yeah, so I would echo everything everyone else has said, but really it is down to, we talk a lot in the financial technology industry, in all industries really, about ESG, right? And the social aspect of ESG, the S in ESG, this is it. This is the stuff of that. So, putting the buzzword aside, doing the actual work. And it starts here, and it starts with reaching out after this call to find out more from the Cowrie Scholarship Foundation, and leveraging all of us who've already partnered with this firm to find out how you can make that difference.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Leonardo, we'll close with you.
Chair, could I have a word?
So, of course, Sir Geoff, come on.
Because what I've heard is that, what you're really saying is that a diverse society requires diverse management to be fair and efficient. And therefore, what you've got to do as companies, the big companies I worked with all my life, you've got to demonstrate the achievement of BME staff. Demonstrate the achievement of BME staff, because that's what will motivate companies other than yourself. It's not just about numbers.
Geoff, thanks very much. Leonardo and Jeremy, I'm not sure if you're still on the call. If you wanted, because welcome being probably the largest, certainly in the UK and in Europe, I would have thought as a charity. So sorry to throw that in on you, but Leonardo, do you want to close, and then we'll ask Jeremy for a quick comment on this point as well.
Sure. I mean, I couldn't agree more with what my fellow panelists have just said. I mean, when it comes to, when I thought the question is precisely, is embedding, not embedding in the culture and the strategy of the organization, a board or a senior management that believes in terms of the genuine value that diversity and inclusion brings will guarantee to make sure that all this is being taken forward. So getting the board to believe on the value of diversity.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Yeah, I like everybody else, agree with everything that's been said. The only things I'd add to it are, I think this has to be owned at the very senior level of every organization. This has to be talked about every single board meeting, whatever you call your executive, whatever. If it's not owned there and people aren't held accountable for it in there, whatever you do, incentives, annual reviews, bonuses or not bonuses, you've got to hold all of us to account for it. The second thing I'd say is, and learning from some other aspects which have similar characteristics, we cannot assume that this will just solve itself with a trickle-down effect. It won't. It'll only solve itself by action. It's not just about getting people into high school or universities and then hoping that over a generation it'll suddenly churn in. It requires far more action than that. We've seen that in gender issues, where across all sectors of society, you know, you've got 50% or more than that of females going now to university compared to males, but it hasn't translated into senior leadership within many companies, organizations, and other entities. So I think it needs a more, as Mike said, it needs a more active ownership of this. It needs the data, and people need to be held accountable for making change.
Jeremy, thank you very much for action. I mean, what more can we, that's the perfect note to close this on. It remains just for me, we are a little bit over time, but we started a couple of minutes late. I really just, Celia, thank you for chairing that last session with our corporates. That was fantastic. I really, time was too short. I just want to thank our speakers right at the beginning, Jeremy, Sir Jeremy Farrar, Dr. Melrose Stewart, and Sir Geoff Palmer. Just thank you for the first session. And then, of course, we had our panelists, Richard Sharp, Vice President over at Unilever for Human Resource, Chioma Okoye, one of the Managing Directors at Tradeweb, Leonardo Maltino, a partner at Oxera, Celia, Insights and Analytics Lead at Capital Group, and Mike Franklin, Deputy Director of the Partner Framework Group. And I'm just about to lose Mike, it looks like. Okay.
No, the lights went off. They shut me out of the office.
So I just want to thank all of you. We're going to put up a final slide of how you can get hold of us. Thank you very much for your time. And please reach out to us, communications@cowriescholarshipfoundation.org. We would love to join with you, partner, make a difference, change lives. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. Bye-bye.